my clock shows that it's 11:18, and I would like to call the meeting to order. And
I believe Catherine is also on this committee.
Correct.
Catherine Shalhoub. So.
oh yes, she is.
Catherine let us know she will not be able to make it. She fell in her driveway last night.
Okay. So she fell in her driveway last night?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great.
So say so.
Like you didn't have enough physical issues in the past. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. Can I just turn this over to you, Sean?
Yeah, I'm going to present my screen.
Okay.
So that way, and then we'll walk through, and then I guess how we'll do it is we'll start with each part of the agenda. The first part being the people transportation contract, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So give me a second as I present. Okay. You guys can hear me okay? After
I can, yes.
Good. Okay. So for the first part of the four that we have would be our pupil transportation contract. And typically what that is on an annual basis, we just review our contract with Brant Busing to provide our transportation of all our students, whether it be regular routes, special education routes, extracurricular routes, or any other kind of special routes, we call them, where we would have to inquire on Brant to assist us, whether it be shuttling the middle school kids to the high school for sports, or potentially taking any kind of kids with behavior issues that have to leave, or even with going outside of MPSD boundaries to pick up kids due to the result of homelessness. Last year, we had a pretty significant change in the contract because we changed the routes based on grade realignment. So this year, we just have a little bit of an increase kind of based on the CPI index of just the costs of diesel fuel, cost of insurance, and things like that typically come with an independent with a contract on there, just a small 2% kind of across the board. The memo details the amounts on there, but ultimately just a total increase of about $29,000 for would be the 2021 school year, and then we would review and discuss around this time next school year. So the memo kind of just breaks out from a summary, and then all the attachments afterwards, I just included the actual contract. This was reviewed by our insurance broker from a property insurance, and has been reviewed by a legal consult just to make sure we're not anything that's not putting MPSD in further financial or any kind of operational risk.
Sure.
We've typically used Brant Busing for a number of years, and they're pretty much the only ones in the area. So things have been going real well. I will just comment on one thing just to take a look at. If we look on page 9 of the contract under Article 6, letter C. I'm sorry. I apologize. I misguided you guys. Yeah, right. It's a little there. I'm looking at Article 5, compensation, number C. So just the school board, I'll read it verbatim. The school board guarantees payment for a minimum of 178 days of operation for each school year during which this contract is enforced. And the payment shall be 60% of the regular payment for each of that 175 should actually be 178. We'll just have to adjust it. It looks like the form didn't pick it up. But ultimately, I just wanted to point that out because we had to run into that this year. Basically, what that's saying is there's 178 days in the school year that a bus would be running that would incur cost. And it's saying if they're out of that 178, if there's any days where there are no buses running, MPSD's financial responsibility is only 60% of that payment. So we had kind of that kind of came to light this year a lot more with the whole COVID thing and all schools closing down as of March 18th. So right now we have, we kept as is with the 60%. 60% is kind of what the calculated cost of what I calculate is what their fixed cost would be. But we might reevaluate, given the experience we've had this year going forward, to add some maybe a pandemic language in there in the event if we do have that happen where something would occur where we are off of school for a long period of time. Just might be some language in there to ultimately protect the district.
Sure. And that 60%, is that kind of industry standard in regard to non-operation?
It's
We came up with a 175, Dick, just so you know. Typically, it had been 180 days because when school was considered by day, 180 days were considered to be the school year. We adjusted the contract several years ago to change the number of days for our operation here.
Dave, I think your mic is off.
You were muted.
Okay.
That's all right. I'll reiterate. But yeah, the ones, it used to be 180, then we came up 175, and the 178 this year is actual operational days, just given there. But the 60% is an industry standard. We thought it was, but then through this pandemic, we've learned that there's the common standard was about 89%, and that 89%, though, I will comment, was from majority of the school district surveyed and conversations, it was predominantly with the larger corporation bus companies. So like your Lamers and things like that had in their contracts 89%. That's just kind of what it was.
So we're sitting pretty good at 60%.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, hopefully we don't have to incur it
Right.
this year. I mean, we did have to do some negotiating this year with that and come to there and part of on that end. But just wanted to point that part out. We'll probably, if going forward, if we fast forward to next year, we'll probably get additional language added in there just to protect us.
When is that contract due?
We don't. It doesn't actually come into effect.
It's 2024. It's actually through 2024.
Correct.
Dick, what we've done historically is we have approved 5-year contracts, and each year we essentially allow it to be opened up to extend it another year beyond that every time. That's what we've been doing. We've been using the contract as a base and then making adjustments along the way. And typically, it's Brant that has come to us asking for certain increases. And we have some changes that we have proposed as well. But as Sean mentioned earlier, we don't have a lot of competition to go to, so our leverage is limited. On the other hand, Brant's leverage is limited as well, since without our school district, it's likely their operation could not continue in this area. So that's where that comes from.
Okay. I just had a couple of questions about the memo, Sean. When you make reference to the special education transportation, is that figure included in the overall contract amount, or is that separate?
It's in addition to.
It's an addition. Okay. All right. And how do we, so you've got an amount for the special education transportation, the extracurricular costs, it's a per hour rate. How do you budget for that? Is there a certain amount that you budget for extracurricular?
Kind of do two things: historical, what we've paid for in the past, and then ultimately looking at the historical numbers of what was ran and trying to get some information from the athletic department on how many times games and things like that. Sometimes it's best guess estimate. I'll be honest, I've never taken the time to analyze it and say, okay, football is going to travel these 4 places and it's this many miles and things like that. You get that cost versus benefit of it's worth it, but a lot of it's historical, and then just say, okay, if we did $10 last year in costs and the increase was 2%,
sure,
factor in.
Right. Okay. And the other question I have, Sean, is have you had some dialogue with the bus company in regards to the various possible scenarios for this fall?
Yep, that was part of our conversation that Mark, I, and Mr. Reckley from Brant Bus met last week, Thursday, discussed it and kind of got the contract part nailed down, and then the just kind of what's going on. If we look at the CDC, they want every other maximum things, and if we follow, if the current recommendation from the CDC is followed, it will definitely put a big strain on us and a big strain on them from a number of bus operation. But we were waiting for some guidance or that big document that came out from
PPI.
yesterday, the forward, to hopefully help us. And they did include a number of good things for transportation. So now it will be the meeting of the minds between the bus company and us and trying to figure everything out to be, most importantly, what's safe for the students.
Right.
My only question, and I have this question every year because Brant typically requests increases that are above the consumer price index. They're again requesting that since the CPI currently is below 0. They're asking for 2%. That's a fairly high number in light of the current economy and what is forecast for the future. I'm not surprised, however, since that's a common request from them. And the fact that there's little leverage on either side has usually meant that we've approved it in spite of my objections. So I'll just throw that out there. I have voted in favor of the contracts, though. I will continue to speak, as to that, to the negotiations that take place and how limited we are in modifying the request. So.
Very well said and true.
I would move to approve the modified and upgraded contract, which would extend the current contract to 2025. So it'd be a contract from 2020 through 2025. I'll make a motion in that.
All right, I would second the motion. And all in favor, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay, thank you both.
Okay, and then the next item on the agenda is a Columbus Street parcel.
Correct. Yeah, this inquiry came to me from a gentleman of the public, and just kind of first one I've ever had experience, so brought forth to it, and just wanted to, from an inquiry purpose, bring it forward to the Finance and Budget Committee to read and provide any input. It looks like the gentleman has done it before. I know Mr. Nichols was on the board when this happens. I'll let him turn over to him to give a little bit of an update, but ultimately just brought forward so that from an inquiry. Sir Dave, do you want to comment?
Sure. Thanks. Several years ago, we did receive a similar inquiry from the Mr. Barden. He lives next door to the property on the corner of South 8th and Columbus. That was a grocery store many years ago, turned into a hangout for high school kids. It was very popular with the high school kids and very unpopular with both the city and the school due to the activities that took place at that location. When the owner passed away and that property became vacant, the city purchased it, or the school district purchased it. The building was burned down, and it was felt at the time that the best use of that facility was no use of it, and to leave it the way it is. It's a very small little lot. It's not sellable on its own, really. Mr. Barden moved there a couple of years, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. He purchased the property as is, his property. He has some concerns with his own property, apparently, but that's not our issue. That's not something we need to remediate. This is not a purchase offer, so we don't need to negotiate with him on it. He hasn't offered us anything. The previous time that he offered it, my records indicate he offered $3,000 for it. My research has indicated that the property is assessed at $9,000. I doubt that we've ever had an appraisal on it. There's no need for us to have an appraisal on it since we haven't offered it for sale. We're not paying property tax on it. The upkeep of it is minimal. We're right across the street. The guy cuts the grass, He can just go right across the street and it takes him 5 minutes to do that. So that's not an issue. We did have some safety concerns in that leaving that vacant makes that corner a lot easier visually for traffic. And that was one of our reasons for rejecting, in addition to the fact that he wanted it, he effectively wanted us to give it to him. And we're not interested in giving away property. I don't think that's a wise thing for us to do. And this appears as though to be a similar request. I don't see any difference. But as I mentioned to Sean before, we can just let him know that it was brought up before the finance committee and we placed it on file. At least that would be my position. I would have no interest in opening up negotiations since we've not been offered anything for it. And we're not currently in the business of selling that property. So that's pretty much where it's at.
Dave, if that property, serves no purpose, for the school district, why did we purchase it?
Because we didn't want anybody else to put anything on there. When it gave us the opportunity first to get rid of the building so that nobody else would start a similar business, which was objectionable to the administration and to the city because of the goings on that took place in that building. Let's put it like this. Kids went over there to smoke, to do whatever they couldn't do on school property because they were right across the street. It was very convenient. And so when the school bought it, the intention was to just leave it as is. And it's a safe property for us right now. And I don't see any reason to change that. It's we're not going to get a lot of money if we do sell it. We also lose control of the property. So if someone buys it, for example, the person next door, they can put on there whatever they can that meets code. We might not like what they put on, and there will be future owners to the place. Again, it's not, there's little value in that property to anybody. And there's just no incentive that I see to sell it. It's safe right now. It's safe. It's not harming us or anybody else. What are you going to do? We might get $4,000 or $5,000 for it, but what do we need it? Why do we need to do that? So that was pretty much the position of the board. I don't recall that the board actually ever got that. I think we rejected it at the committee level. It never got past committee. So I don't think the board ever sent him anything back. Mr. Holzman might have responded to him, but I don't know that the board ever did. And we just rejected it at committee and it never went any farther than that.
And is that where we're at today? It's we don't need to make a motion or take action on it. We had a discussion of it, and we decided that, we're not interested in selling. We haven't been given an offer, and regardless, even if we were given an offer, we're not interested in selling, and it's done.
Well, yeah. And now if we were given an offer, our policy would effectively require us to at least respond to that offer. However, a simple inquiry like this from someone in the public doesn't mandate that we have to respond as a committee or as a board.
Okay.
Mr. Alford could respond, Mr. Holtzman could respond and just say, we received your inquiry. We thank you for your, interest. The finance committee met on June 23rd and the item was placed on file. That's what we typically do at the county and city level when we receive letters from citizens that we're not going to take any action on. You just put them on file. So they're filed away. We still have it. We probably have his last letter. I mean, we should. We should hold on to those. And that's about it. And you just don't do anything with it.
So somebody does need to get back to him to let him know that the finance committee did address the issue. And who will that be?
Somebody should get back to him. I don't know that we're required to. Somebody should. He could have been on this meeting. For all we know, he could do, be on the live stream of the meeting.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I would say as chairperson, yeah, you maybe should tell or ask someone in administration, probably at least to respond to him and say that we met. That would be good. That would be good public policy.
Yeah.
Mr. Nitch, I've had conversations. I've been the focal point of the email. So And I've told him the process that it would be presented once Finance and Budget Committee was formed, and he was aware. So I can, by all means, I can reach back out to him with.
That'd be great. I'd appreciate that, Sean. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the 2020-21 preliminary budget. What have you got for us, Sean?
Yeah, just kind of put it together. A little bit of a updated summary of where we're at. And that's kind of starts on the first one we're looking at is the Fund 10. And just rolls through just kind of budget summaries of then the 27 and your other funds and things like that. The biggest ones that change from the last time we met in March are Fund 10 and Fund 27, because that was the ones where we're kind of reliant on when is revenue coming in, what are our expenses with the appropriate approvals of salaries and what in various parts on there. To walk through and kind of to give a timeline of it. So on July 1st, the DPI will release quite a slew of information that will be very impactful for us from, we'll get our equalization aid estimates and a number of different federal source and state source estimates from a revenue standpoint. Right now, the revenue presented here in this current budget summary is based on revenue budgeted for this current year and not the next year. So it does show best estimates of what we currently have. So if something would increase or go up, those numbers would change. But it does factor in the total tax levy, does factor in the tax levy that we talked about back in March, where as of right now, the DPI state statutes does allow us to increase our per member base. And we'll get to that part last to kind of discuss that. But this pretty much has the most up-to-date, current, accurate salaries based on our returning employees, future employees coming aboard in August, predominantly for teachers, and any other resignations that would have happened that we've put on, plus any additional ads that were added based on prior personnel committees and things like that. So it kind of runs through, and right now, I guess if you look at the gist of it from expenses to revenue, factoring in the current State of Union tax levy, state equalization aid, and other revenue sources, if this was 100% accurate in what was going to be decided today, we're looking at just shy over putting a little bit back in fund balance for the ending of the year, assuming all things go well. So it kind of shows $107 based on there would go back into fund balance. So predominantly, I would consider that a cost neutral budget. A large portion of that is the increase of the tax levy assisted, plus the number of, if you look at our salaries, are while we're giving a 1.81% increase, we're just starting to see the number of people retire increase. So therefore, when someone retires, your salary is at a higher level. When someone comes on, your salary is usually at, if you're out of college, somewhat of a basic entry salary on that end. I will point out the employee benefits part is always a focus for me, particularly in this part. The jump of the 7.23% is factoring in a couple different things. I kind of overestimated what could potentially be the 2021 WRS contribution, given with all the things that happened, what was going to happen from that end. Also, based on all the calculations and analysis and discussions with our broker, our health insurance is projected to probably have an increase of about 4.65%. But they do claim that you'll kind of see a bell curve with that right now we're low in claims because a lot of the hospitals and areas was not taking in patients only due to the COVID. So we'll see a increase in claims initially, and then supposed to bell curve out towards the end. And according to the actuaries, they say that about a 4.65% increase overall. So that is a contributing factor to the employee benefits increasing as well. on that end, but predominantly the health insurance, what's going to happen with WRS, and then our LTD rate changed a little bit due to claim history. But of our expenses, as far as the non-capital, capital, and purchase services, those I always call our operational, and we hold the line as close as possible with those as we can. Normally what happens if you see like the capital objects and the non-capital, the reason for increase on those are our contracts with like a CISA agency. They're providing services, so we have to factor in their increases and are limited at that as well. But that's kind of like I said, the revenue portion run the same, keep looking similar on that end. The state aid is the state sources factors in a little bit of an increase based on what we currently have received versus budgeted. A large decrease is our CISA aid over the last couple of years. That's the intermediate sources, 62 last year, 22 projected for this year. Keeps dropping down. Combination of those things too is just the reimbursement you get from that. And that's all state driven. And plus two, as we become more self-efficient, not having to participate in the programs, we would get their increases on there. And the biggest one that came is this other revenues, this E-rate. It's a federally funded program. And we had a very large technology purchase the year that Ken retired. And that was carried over. And now we don't need to purchase that. So the revenue decreased. But hypothetically, you would see it also decrease in the expense as well. But that's the reason why, it's always alarming when you see a big jump from a revenue standpoint on there. But I'll stop at fund 10 before I go any further. Do you guys have any questions on that summary?
Well, just that our revenue numbers are a wish and a hope, obviously, and probably perhaps more unknown than they have been in past years. And so I would be very hesitant to approve anything until we have more firm numbers, which unfortunately may not occur for well after we even need to approve a budget. There's been rumblings from the state legislature that they're not going to address education dollars until after the election, which would be very challenging for us.
Correct.
So, otherwise, thanks for I like the font a lot better. The only thing I'll say is the link on BoardBook doesn't work. Really?
Okay. All right. Well, I apologize for that. I can research into
file not found. We're sorry. BoardBook was unable to find the file you requested.
Okay.
So, just so you know.
No, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it is with like Mr. Nichols said, the revenue portion is currently, if I'm being completely transparent with you guys, is best guess estimate. And this is just really a summary to show kind of here's where we're at. Ultimately, as you both are aware, we bring forward the budget in October when it's for our public hearing and official board approval once it goes through the Finance and Budget Committee. And then ultimately in October, towards the end, we do approve the tax levy situation. So this is the goal is after the July 1st, I would like for us to meet again when we have more of an updated numbers to kind of revisit and then just keep study of what here's what our changes were. But like Mr. Nichols said, they will get our estimates in July and we might not get anything until any word of what will change until November. And that's kind of what the last part will go into is some scenarios to put together for you guys to see. Of what would happen if it's true. I've heard that potentially the Joint Finance Committee at one time said that 2021 will change. It'll be 22, 23, 23 on that end because of the new biennial budget. But we'll see. The revenues a number of things could happen. If we just scroll through the rest of the pages quickly, and special education following the same path as well with the salaries and the benefits. And then ultimately we transfer our money out of Fund 10 to cover a Fund 27 because of the zero-based fund balance carried versus DPI. Just a reminder that the debt service fund is you're going to see a larger decrease because there's a payment that's not we're roughly not paying up to around $1 million extra in debt. We made a more aggressive payment this year, flow through next year in October and April when our payments are due will not be required. Any other questions, guys? On the other summary pages, and they said nothing much changed from the last time, but food service continues to perform well. We'll have our Fund 46 is where we stashed money away at one time a number of years back. Will come available next year to use. So that's what that one page shows, a negative 17,000. It's just an additional amount that will come in, and it has to be used for capital improvements. And we'll have more knowledge of what the capital improvements are within the coming months. That's determined, but we can't touch it till 21. It just shows the transfer out within the year and then go from there.
Sean, when I was working in administration at Two Rivers School District and responsibilities with special education, our numbers were fairly high in Two Rivers. And as a result, we received, a special revenue from the state, because of our high needs. And I know that Manitowoc's special education numbers are quite high as well. Has the Manitowoc School District received, do you know what I'm referring to, Sean?
Yeah, number two, a couple of different things. We have our special aid, categorical aid, and then we have high cost claim.
Okay.
And the high cost claim is usually you can apply for funds for any student that costs in excess of, I think the current ceiling or floor ceiling is 30,000 right now.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm familiar with categorical aids. I'm familiar with high cost. But in addition to that, the Two Rivers School District would receive as much as 80 to 100,000. It's because our special education numbers were actually higher than a certain threshold.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. The name is drawing a blank on me. I know we do get. I'll have to go back and think about it, what it is. But no, I know, we do get something in there. I know there's 4 different aids we get. We get our Medicare reimbursement.
Right.
There, we get our flow through, which is the special ed dollars, your categorical aid, and then your high cost. And there's that 5th one. It's in there. I just can't remember the name, but I know it's not nearly as much as the cost incurred, but it does.
Right. And I don't even know if the state is even making those dollars available anymore and all. And I don't recall, it's the specific name of that grant. But your Medicaid dollars, does that go back into the general fund?
No, that goes back into that's offset as a revenue in the special education fund.
Okay. All right, great.
Just so you know, would have to be used for expenses. They only pay you if you're going to use them for specific expenses.
You're muted.
Allowed to use it. Pretty common.
Dave, you're muted. I didn't hear that. Sorry.
The Medicaid dollars have to be used for targeted expenses and approved expenses. So typically when the federal government pays Medicaid dollars, they pay it to the state and then it comes back to the local entities. It has to be used for specific purposes that it was intended to. That's how you gained it. You apply for it, you get it approved, you have to use it for those items. You can't use it for other things. You can be creative in how you determine, what all falls into that category, but that's a whole nother story. Okay.
My recollection is that in Two Rivers, they generally put it back into the general fund.
They could not have done that. That would be illegal. That did not occur. It may have gone in and then used for the purposes that it was intended. But Medicaid dollars, the government requires you to use it for Medicaid related expenses, and you have to fill out. I worked in that area. So I'm well aware of it. You can be creative, but
Right.
you can't just throw it in a pot and spend it on anything you want. You're going to get caught on that. So I suspected when you say it went into the general fund, it may have gone into the general fund, but it was spent on the items that was intended to be spent on.
Sure. At that very well, maybe.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Right. Okay.
Sorry about being muted, but when we have multiple people here in the same place, it echoes. And
I know.
Turning it on mute helps. But you
And-
gotta learn how to read lips. Thanks, folks. Thanks for at least not being too harsh on me there, Dick.
No, and you're right. When you're not muted, there's an echo when Sean.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready to move on, Sean?
Yeah. This was all informational. There's nothing that you guys
Okay.
have to do as far as voting or anything like that. It's just a summary of where we're at right now, and we'll get together again in July. Once the July 1st equalization aid estimates come out and things like that, and we can get a better grasp of where it is. The last part is also informational. I just wanted you guys to be aware of. I did 3 different scenarios of what I'm hearing of what's going to happen, what could happen. The first one on there, it's a little scrunched together because it's printed on one page, but you have like what would happen if the true we have a provision where we get an extra $179 on the tax levy ability on our member base, and what would happen if that got removed, because they are talking about removing that, and that's what page 1 is about on that end. So that shows ultimately if they did take that away, we would lose about $904,000 in revenue. So that's part 1, and just kind of shows really the 3 different areas on it that what could happen, whether we be part scenario 1's the low revenue. That's where they take away the 179 per member base for us. Part 2 would be if they I've heard they're going to do a 5% reduction in state aid. That would impact us by 1.9 million less in revenue. And part 3 is the removal of the per pupil aid. That's where it takes, they give you $745 right now per member that we have. And if they remove that completely, Mr. Nitsch, we're looking at the red in there would be 3.7 million. So you can imagine number of different things that could happen, and just kind of we'll see what happens.
I'd rather do that. I'll ask you, I'd rather have people.
Well, that would create a rather significant challenge, I would think, for all the school districts in the state. If especially part 3, were to take place, but for that matter, it's any of those, create challenges.
Correct, right? Yep. And we'll know more as we go through and kind of keep monitoring those scenarios, and they're just right now presented just on pure impact of revenue. Ultimately, as a district, if that whatever scenario would play out, administration would have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how are we going to get that on there, or things like that. So, but we'll see. Any questions on those?
No.
Okay.
No. I appreciate the information. And did you have anything else for us, Sean?
No, not necessarily. No, just those 4 things on there. Like I said, I'll coordinate with you guys each and trying to find a time in July, probably within the 2nd, 3rd week of when we can get back together and go over the new revenue numbers and what everything's looking at. And by then we might have some more information from the joint task force as well.
Sure, that sounds good. Okay, with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn. Dave?
I would move to adjourn.
All right, I'll second. All in favor? We are.
Aye.
All right. Motion. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you both. I'm going to do the stop presenting and cancel out of this so you guys can go into the noon board meeting then.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Sean.